Hello, and welcome to the Wild Blue Podcast, perspectives on aviation lives, lifestyles, and business.
Hi, welcome to the Wild Blue Podcast. We got a special guest with us today, Todd. And it's not you, Todd. I'm sorry.
Why is that? I'm not a guest, but I'm special.
No, we have Sir Isaac Newton here, otherwise known as Isaac Martin. Isaac is our intern here at Wild Blue, and what's pretty neat is he just got his private pilot's license.
Absolutely.
And so we thought it'd be fun to talk with Isaac a little bit about his experience going through the process of getting his license. So Isaac, give us a little bit of background on you. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what's going on and how you decided you wanted to pursue your license.
Well, my name is Isaac Martin. I've been flying since my 17th birthday, so I've been flying for almost 2 years now. I've always been kind of fascinated with planes since like 6th grade, I think, is when I started wanting to fly as a career. And then I kind of just knew some people and eventually started flying and took some time off, so my license took a really long time to get. But yeah.
So what's interesting about that is you did not have, for example, a father or uncle that was a pilot or involved in the aviation industry or anything like that. You just sort of developed an interest on your own.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, I've had a few family members. My grandpa in the Marines was a helicopter tech in Vietnam, and then my great-grandpa worked for TWA back in the day.
Oh, nice, yeah.
What did he do for TWA?
He worked on 747s, actually,
okay.
and helped with the flight manual for them.
Oh, cool.
So that's that. I like that because I came from that same kind of a mindset where I didn't know anyone, but I loved airplanes. It sounds like that was your sort of calling. Did you find yourself watching airplanes fly over and looking up, kind of a thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up right next to the airport.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I live 2 minutes from MCI.
Okay.
So, I mean, as a little kid, I see airplanes fly over my house like every single day, night and day.
Nice. Yeah.
So that definitely helped the interest. And then I love flying. Just always been fun to me.
Did you know anyone in your high school that was flying or learning to fly? Did you happen to run across anyone you...
Actually, there's one girl who was a year older than me that actually flew over ATD as well.
Oh, really?
And then she decided not to go through with it.
So ATD being...
ATD Flight Systems being the school I fly at.
Okay, that's here in Kansas City at MKC at the downtown airport.
Mm-hmm. And then I now know another guy from my high school who was like 3 years older than me, who's just starting with his license, like retroactively out of high school. But that's the only other person I know that flies.
Okay, so you graduated. You went to Northland Christian.
Mm-hmm.
You graduated in 19.
I graduated in 21.
21, that's right, in 21. Okay, so math. You graduated in 21, and so here it is, 2022. So you've only been out of high school for
a year almost.
Yeah, almost a year.
Almost exactly.
Okay.
Chris, do you remember when you were anywhere near that young?
I don't remember anything anymore, Todd. I got to have somebody tell me what I remember.
I just wanted to make sure that we understood that. So then you go out to the airport and you take a discovery flight, or what was that? What was your initial flight, or had you flown in a little airplane prior to you getting one?
I was wondering, have you?
So the first experience I had, so my parents, for my 17th birthday, surprised me with my discovery flight.
Uh-huh.
I had no clue. Like, I'd been asking since I was like 15. And never happened, for whatever reason didn't happen. And then I opened the card and there's it was like a fake certificate that my dad made, and it was like, this is good for one flight at downtown. And I was like, no way, this is crazy. So I went up and it was awesome. It was so cool.
You liked it right from the start,
Yeah.
Didn't feel airsick or anything of that nature?
It was awesome. The only thing that I felt was just a little bit more bumpy than an airliner.
Yep, just a little bit.
But
So start to finish then, how long did that? So you got that certificate, then you just got your license. So how many months was that?
I think it was right about 18 months.
Right about 18.
But I took 4 months off
Okay.
last winter because of basketball season.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then I had to relearn a lot of stuff because I took 4 months off.
And so you're flying in what? What airplanes are you training in?
We train in Warriors.
You got triple nickel over there?
Yeah, we do have
Yeah.
triple nickel. I have not flown that plane actually.
Oh, really?
That's the
616.
legendary one around here.
I've flown in 616. That was my introductory flight. Was in 616. But I mainly flew 9 Charlie and 428 were the two I flew most of the time.
Okay. So
I've
they
heard
have
Charlie
4
for
of
the
them
most
over
part.
there. That's interesting. And so you just progressed, flew weekly or whenever you could get out there. And we should mention, by the way, because obviously our listeners can't see Isaac. He had to take basketball season off. He's kind of a tall dude, so that's why he's a basketball player, I presume.
Yeah, tough to get in.
Can you dunk?
I have a few times, but not frequently. Not anymore.
So how often did you fly? Like weekly or just when you could get out to the airport, or what was that like?
At the beginning, I know we try to fly at minimum twice a week. Most of the time, it was probably 3 or 4 times a week. Right at
That's
the
really good
start.
pace.
Yeah. And then it kind of, when school started, I was really active in like my school. So it tapered off a little bit to like 2 times a week was like good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then I ended up soloing on, it was the last day in October. I forgot which one it ends on, 30th or 31st.
Halloween.
Oh,
October 31st.
I think so. Oh yeah. I think so, actually.
So, did your parents know you were soloing, or did that just sort of happen and you came home like, oh, by the way, I soloed today?
Oh no, my parents knew.
Were they out there? Did they see you? Or?
Yeah, they were watching.
Oh, that's neat.
But
Yeah.
ironically, when my first solo, I went up and then they changed the pattern, and so I was going left traffic to runway 1, and then they changed it to right traffic over the buildings. And they were all freaking out on the ground, like, "Where'd he go? Where'd he go?" Like,
Yeah.
my mom
He
was,
took off.
my
He's
mom
headed
was
to another
freaking out.
airport.
And that's one thing for those of you who've never been here to Kansas City or been to the downtown airport. This is kind of a legendary airport, and it sits in a very unique position, right by the Missouri River, just on the kind of northwest side of downtown. And they will put that pattern on 19 inside of the buildings downtown, which the buildings themselves aren't too terribly tall, but the fact is there's a bluff there that they sit upon, so it makes them a lot taller than the physical buildings. And so you're running that pattern inside there. And that's always amazed me here. To this day, I've been flying in and out of here for 35 years. To this day, I am not comfortable doing that.
I fly south.
Yeah.
I
Do you
never
go
go
around
I
on-
never go north of the
Yeah.
buildings, unless it's on takeoff.
Yeah.
Used to
Turn out
be,
inside.
I'd fly the Mighty Beach Skipper
Mm-hmm.
out of here. And you couldn't fly north because in the summertime, it would not clear the Broadway Bridge.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yep.
The downtown is so close here. There's a lot of pictures in magazines and advertisements and stuff with for aviation companies that maybe an avionics company or something like that, but they'll have the Kansas City downtown area in the background because in the ad they're trying to imply how close in general aviation can bring you to downtown. So many of our listeners who've never been here may have actually seen a picture just
Mhm.
because it's used. I see it occasionally anyway, and advertisements have over the years.
Yeah, because it's 5 minutes. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just a...
I've seen it too.
My first solo, talking about oddities. So I take off. This was in Moline, Illinois, and I come around the pattern. It was an August day. It starts raining. I've never found rain. It starts raining on the windscreen, and literally the tower controller there at Moline asked me, if the field goes IFR, what are your intentions?
Oh.
It wasn't that bad,
Oh.
but I don't know what they were trying to prove. Anyway, so I did one pattern, one takeoff, and one landing, and that was on my first solo.
Wow.
So I guess in a way memorable, in a way disappointing, but anyway.
So what do you want to do? You mentioned a career. What are you wanting to do?
So I'm not exactly sure where I want to go with it, whether that be corporate, private, fly for an airline or something like that. That's still kind of up in there for me right now.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. But I think that'll just kind of depend on what's going to fit my life the best and just what I feel led to.
So I'm curious, because I think we could dig into this a little bit for people that are, especially if you're a parent and kind of trying to guide your kid along, or maybe, maybe you are of Isaac's age and you're trying to figure out what the path is for you to get there. I think we can dig into that a little bit. But I'm just curious. So you're going the FBO route, essentially. You're going the flight school, the local flight school, I should say, route to get your licenses and ratings. You're getting ready to start on your commercial and instrument pretty soon.
Yeah, this week.
Yeah. So why do that? What made you decide to do that as opposed to go to like an aviation school, like a university, or try to go the military route? What was your line of thinking there?
I say as far as school, like college or something, I was just flying before that. Before I was out of high school, I was a younger high school student, and I graduated at 17. So that wasn't really like on the forefront of my mind when I wanted to start flying. So, I mean, by the time I graduated, I had like 50 hours.
Right.
So, and a lot of colleges don't really like it that much if you have your private coming in because they want to teach you their way. And it's also just way more expensive than what the local flight school is.
Yeah. So can you give us an idea from the time that you started to when you got your private pilot's license, what that's cost?
I think because it took so much longer than like it normally would, I think, or I guess there's not really like a normal, but longer than like the minimum hours for sure. I think it was about 20,000.
Okay. And just for reference, so people have an idea, what's the breakdown on that? What's the hourly cost on the airplanes you're renting, and then is there a fuel surcharge, and then what's the instructor charge?
I'm not sure what the instructor charges because I didn't really deal with any of that. But the plane, it's $160 an hour. It's either $150 or $160 an hour. I'm not 100% sure on that. And those prices went up like at the beginning of this year.
Okay.
So fuel. It used to be a little, for fuel. It used to be a little less. And then they don't charge you for fuel unless you fuel up somewhere else and it's over $6 a gallon.
Okay.
So the fuel's included in that cost.
Okay.
But I mean, I finished my private with like 90 hours.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of time.
We were just talking, was it you and I talking the other day that some schools are now going to a dry rate?
Yes, we were talking about that. And I think I was talking to a flight school operator who was telling me that that's just becoming the norm now because you just can't keep up with fuel costs. And I think it's a great point. I think it's probably more fair to the clients, the students. You either pay more or maybe pay less, depending on so you rent the airplane dry, and what they do at that particular flight school is they dip the tanks, and so that's how they track it. I suppose there must be a little something on the honor system there, because I was thinking about this, if you were, if someone just was off by 1 gallon, and a gallon of avgas is $6 or $7 a gallon, well, that starts to add up. If you're consistently, off or whatever. So, and I highly doubt too many people are going to. I'll add more fuel.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
the TLAR method, that looks about right.
Exactly.
It almost has to have like a representative from the school come out and do it for everyone.
Yeah, I would agree. So what is the plan for your instrument and commercial? You say you're just getting started, so let's talk about the next step. I think that listeners might be curious, what your thoughts are on how to proceed.
Yeah, so I did my private part 61.
Yep.
And I'm going to be doing my instrument part 141 at a very accelerated pace. So I'll be down there 4 to 5 days a week, every week, flying or doing ground or in the sim, because you can for an instrument, which is really nice.
Yeah, the sim will save you some money too.
Yeah, it's half the price
Right.
of an airplane per hour.
So 4 to 5 days per week,
Mhm.
and flying how much on those days? And would it just be a normal, say 1.5, or are you talking about flying like in the morning, taking a little break and flying in the afternoon? I mean, how do you
It'll
see it?
just be once a day.
Okay.
But that should be enough. It'll just be like a lesson per day.
Okay.
And it's like a set.
So it's actually a
Curriculum.
curriculum.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
I forgot
interesting.
which one they use. But yeah, it's a set curriculum every
Yeah.
day. So like you have a lesson. So it's a very structured.
That's kind of
So
good.
that involves the ground school related stuff too.
Yeah, so it's a ground and flight combined.
Okay.
I think that's great, because I think that'll keep you focused
Yeah, exactly.
in the right.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. There is no question about it. And, we often, as pilots, joke. Now, it's not very hard for Chris, but it's hard for most of us. I mean, we joke, though, that it's easy. Anyone can do it. But to be really honest, you got to be able to dedicate yourself. And you got to, it's a different language you're learning. It's a different thought process, thinking ahead of an airplane. And you can quickly feel overwhelmed. Obviously, the best thing is by having a plan like that, a curriculum,
Yeah.
and B, being consistent and following through is your best way to learn.
It's always amazed me. Now, Todd and I, of course, are military guys, but I learned how to fly. Got my private license here locally.
Yeah.
And it's always amazed me when I talk to people that go the route that you're going, that some schools, it's a little loosey goosey on. There's really not much of a syllabus. You guys don't know you don't know what you're going to do the next lesson necessarily. You're not giving anything to kind of look forward to chair fly, to study, and so that's really good to hear that they're doing it that way.
How many hours in your logbook do you have to have under Part 141? Do you know to get your instrument rating? Is it still 125 hours total time, or is there some?
Yeah, it's still 125 total
Okay,
time.
and then commercial, what one?
It's dependent on whether you do 61 or 141.
Right. I knew that.
I think it's 250 for 61
It is,
and
yes.
200 for
200. Okay.
141. Maybe 190.
190 is what I thought. Yeah.
I think it is 190.
So,
Because I know I'll be kind of close when I come out of instrument as to which one I'll go, as to which route, because
really?
of time.
right.
We're not sure yet.
Right. And then we could get into, and I don't know enough to speak about it, but the new ATP rules, and there's so much that's changed in terms of aviation time, hours needed, and the type training you can do and what counts now, because simulators are available and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. We could do a whole thing on
You
that.
learned in a Link simulator, didn't you, Todd?
Well, they didn't have that yet, but I remember that time when Orville cut me off in the pattern. Haven't forgotten that.
So we were talking. Let's come back around, and we were talking about the various ways that you can get there. Military being one, but then you've got the schools. So schools like the big ones. You got UND, you've got Embry-Riddle, and then you've got a lot of other schools that are probably not quite as large, but still have very successful programs, like Lewis University, who's one of our clients actually. And I don't know, does what do we call in CMSU now?
UCM, University of Central
so
Missouri.
They still have one, because they had
Yeah.
talked about, I think, at one point not doing their program.
No, they do. In fact,
Okay.
who did I just talk
Program's
to
up and
recently?
running.
Yeah, it's actually going, I think, pretty good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got those schools,
Yeah.
and I'll just give you my 2 cents, and then I'm curious what you guys think. If you're not inclined to go to the military, or you're not qualified, then you've got really just those two routes. Basically, you're kind of going the local flight school. Sometimes it's the FBO that's not a Part 141 school, and then you've got these other big schools. And my personal opinion is I like the way you're doing it, Isaac. I think you're going to find yourself with less debt, if maybe out of debt or no debt, than going to some of these big schools where, as Todd and I flying for the majors, we routinely will fly with first officers who have 6 figures plus in debt that they're still paying off. A lot of that is done while they're trying to pay it off while they're flying for regionals, whose pay up until recently hadn't been that good. And it always made me question the rationality behind that approach.
Well, I think you left out sort of a third path. You're right, going to there's the collegiate route, but there's all these big 141 schools that are national, like ATP.
Well, that's what I was talking about, kind of like what he's doing,
right? And I would say, Alex, it's a little bit of a hybrid because ATD is a local company here in the Kansas City area, but they are also a 141 school, obviously,
mm-hmm.
and I'm sure they're happy. Maybe they take some people in from elsewhere. I don't know enough about their business, but have you ever met anybody that didn't live in Kansas City while you were over there or in the general vicinity? I mean, they don't house students or anything of that nature that you're aware of.
They don't do stuff like that, but there's a kid, I think from Nebraska, that's coming down to fly here. Because his parents know Bill, who's the owner of the school.
Yeah.
For people who don't know. But that's, I think, the farthest away that anybody comes. Most of the people are just local whose parents fly or something like that, and they just want to get into it.
Well, the flight school owner that I spoke with this past week, I'll put a plug in for it's a place in Plymouth, Indiana, called Alpha Flight, and he is there's 2 partners. The one partner is a 787 first officer at American Airlines, and I was really impressed with that school and their sort of direction, and they were bringing people in or trying to grow that, to bring people to the small town of Plymouth, Indiana, which is a little south of South Bend, Indiana,
for sure.
and west of Fort Wayne. And so there's an option. There's some places like that. I remember at Oshkosh this last summer talking to some people that had a flight school in southern Minnesota. Again, not the big ATP, almost really what ATD is like here. So that is I like that route too. I think that I think that's a pretty good, cost effective. I think my impression from talking to first officers and so on at the airline is, obviously, the collegiate route is expensive, and ATP, while very efficient, is expensive. I in no way is this an endorsement or for any of these businesses or a negative comment. I think they all have their pluses, and depending on a person's personal circumstances, you could go to one of these places I was describing where you go, but then you're paying for housing and you're adding a lot of costs in your life. Maybe you live locally like you do, and this ultimately is the most cost-effective way, or certainly the most efficient way. So I think they all offer some.
I think, frankly, in some cases you get better training, and the reason I say that is in some schools, and I'm just going from a lot of the folks that I talk to, they are. They're kind of certificate mills.
Yes.
Their goal is to get you the certificate, not necessarily to train you with all of the different aspects of airmanship and situational awareness and things like that you can oftentimes miss out on. And so any time that you're going through one of these programs, and it doesn't matter, you and I were both taught in the military, you've got to take charge of your training. You got to do the same thing. And if you feel like something is not being presented, you need to ask for it to be, you got to ask for it to be done. Hey, I've got a question about this. Why are we not doing this? What, I haven't done this, but I've heard this is being done. Let's go out and do it, because you'll get schools that won't train spins.
Right.
You'll get You get schools that just touch on just the minimum amount that they need to, and so and most of them I think are pretty good about catering to the individual and trying to mold it to what you want. But you as the individual, you've got to take charge of that training, and you've got to ask a lot of questions.
Well, I think that's a great point. Yes, and a great point for you as a new guy going into this. If you don't understand, obviously you have some resources and people like us now that you know, and you've gotten to know more people in aviation. But don't be afraid to
let's just face it. Knowing Todd is a feather in anyone's cap.
I'm just saying,
it really is. Yeah,
I'm just saying. Well, I heard I had a guy tell me recently that he felt going part 61 you get better stick and rudder school. This is very much a generalization, but you get better stick and rudder schools where the skills. I mean, where the schools that are more what you refer to as a mill, just grinding people out. It's more get you through the training and not going to spend as much time on stick and rudder. It's more procedural. Conversely, I think that can work. If you learn at a Part 61 school in an uncontrolled airport, it's a big deal to go visit the Tower airport that's literally just that. It's a little part class Delta and nothing else, which is like just barely a step above being an uncontrolled. You never talk to an approach controller or center controller or anything like that. Then, I think that's also a hard thing to people that don't understand that don't know. So there's advantages to where you learn no matter what the circumstances, and there's disadvantages,
Yeah, and I'm lucky to fly at an airport that also has a major international airport right next to it that I've landed at as well.
Yeah, you've got a lot here. You got class
Cool.
Bravo airspace. You got all the airspaces. Some of it underlies other parts of it. And
A lot to have to avoid, but
yeah.
Well, this is a challenging
really
airport.
cool.
Yeah, you get in trouble taking off out of here.
Yeah, corporate and occasionally airliners coming in here because any of the sports teams that come in, they bring in 737s and so on, 757s. And so, you never know what military. I've seen military airplanes in here. This is a great airport.
a lot of military airplanes.
Yeah.
Not to mention, it makes you this airport. What's the one thing that you think about a lot coming into taking off out of this airport? I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Where are you going to? If you lose an engine, what are you going to do?
There's so few choices here.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I don't like about this airport. I've gotten to the point where, side note here, I've gotten to the point where at airports I've started pulling up satellite views of them and looking around and seeing what looks like a reasonable place to put the airplane.
That's a good
down.
idea.
After the insurance
It's a
company
really
buys
good
it, right then when that engine quits, they own it. Where am I going to give this thing back to them and walk out? And because I started doing that here, because I'm like, man, there's just nothing here.
There's nothing, especially if you're taking off on like 19 or 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell my family, I
billions.
said, we're probably going to get wet. The river might be the best option.
It might be. Let's hope it's not January.
Yes. That's exactly right.
Oh.
That's exactly right. Well, cool. Anything else you want to bring up or talk about, Isaac?
Not,
Your experience?
just had a good time flying so far.
Yeah, this is great. What's cool about Isaac is he's been excited about the whole thing. You can see that there's a lot of drive and determination in him. He wants to learn, and I think one of the primary reasons you're here as an intern is that you don't have you don't have that arrogant swagger to you that sometimes permeates people in the flying field.
Yeah, that's a
you know
good
what I'm
point.
saying?
Yeah.
Some of these guys that. Anyway, we'll just leave it at that. So I'm thankful for that. You got that learning mindset because you probably heard Todd's heard me say this before. A guy taught me this years ago. There are no experts in aviation. There's only those who refuse to quit learning. And as soon as somebody tells me that they're an expert, man, I stop listening almost instantly because unless they've got something else to tell me, I want to learn.
Yeah.
I want to learn. I don't want to be thought of as this guy with all this time and he's the expert or anything like that. And I learn something almost every time I go flying with almost everybody I go fly with.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know nothing. I feel like compared to everyone I've flown with, ever.
Yeah.
We'll never forget though, when you're out there by yourself or you got you are the pilot in command and you got to, there is a mentality that in the airplane that, the decision rests with you. And that's always something to start to ingrain in yourself from early on in aviation. You can't overstate that.
Absolutely.
Because the higher up the chain you go, the more people are going to be trying to persuade you, some of them trying to lean on you or intimidate you into making a decision. And, you got a high-profile client sitting in the back of the airplane, and they got to get from point A to point B, and they get mad. It's your decision. It's not theirs.
That's true.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now,
that is one thing that I've struggled with actually a lot. Right at the beginning when I started flying is just being confident, making those decisions quickly. I'll get to a decision eventually, but it's making those sometimes harder decisions. Like if you're practicing like emergency descent or emergency landing, like, okay, I'm going to land here right now. This is exactly where I'm going. And then that's final. Like, and it would take me, like a long time ago, it would take me 2-3 minutes to figure that out.
That's such a great and perceptive comment that you just made, Isaac, because you're right. You're watching students try to pick, they know sort of okay, what do I got to do? Pick a field is one of the course of things. and they're like, well, there's one. And meanwhile, the airplane's descending and they just can't make up their mind. And
by the time I pick a field, it'd be 500 feet above the ground.
Yeah.
You don't have any time to start your checklist or anything.
Exactly.
I used to have fun with that, and when I was an instructor at Air Force pilot training, we would do after every mission, you do an EP scenario, emergency procedure scenario, sit down at a desk, and and man, as soon as somebody was being indecisive, I'd have kind of somewhat evil, but I'd have more fun with them because then I'd start throwing out things and options to them. Well, what about this? What about this? And the next thing I know, I'm like, well, you're going to crash now. You have got to, it may not be the best decision, but if you start changing your mind, that's where things
being
really
decisive.
Yep.
Got to.
Well, very neat.
And I hate to say it, we've run just a little too long. We were going to have our gripe about Chris session. But
we'll
we've
do that.
run out of time.
Shoot, that's like a whole season of episodes, isn't it? No, this is good. So, and let me just give a shout out to Isaac's dad. Go fly with him. He's good. He's safe. He wouldn't have his license otherwise. Go fly with him.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. We really appreciate you listening, and hope that you continue to do so. You can always check us out at flywildblue.com. Our number here is 888-773-4249.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Blue Podcast. Find us online at flywildblue.com. And don't forget to subscribe and share.